Cavaliers seasons comes to an end. Play-in tournament out there, Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. The season is over for Cleveland. Trae Young. I mean, Trae Young was absolutely amazing in this particular game. The guy just went off. He went crazy. And ultimately, him going off, him going crazy, and him being Trae Young was the reason that the Atlanta Hawks now move on to playing the Miami Heat in the first round of the playoffs. I mean, Trae Young, Trae Young, Trae Young, Trae Young, Trae Young. I mean, that's all you could say. Dude had 32 of his 38 points in the second half. 32 of Trae Young's 38 points came in the second half. So he balled out. He got it done. And now the Atlanta Hawks move on, and the Cavs go home. A successful season for the Cavs, nonetheless. I mean, we could talk about, obviously, it's funny. This season was very interesting because, they got off to a great start. And ultimately, they were in the top six for most of the season. And then injuries started to pile up. And I think the biggest one was Jared Allen. I mean, they overcame Sexton. They overcame Rubio. They overcame all those injuries. But the one injury that they couldn't overcome is Jared Allen. And him going down on March 6th changed things for this basketball team. It changed the season for the Cleveland Cavaliers. It did. Jared Allen, they overcame so much throughout the season in terms of injuries, but not having Jared Allen, for as long as they didn't have him, and they got him back tonight, but he clearly was 100%, kind of sort of was playing with one hand at this point in that particular game. So, you look at the Cleveland Cavaliers and what they were at that point in the season when Jared Allen went down. So when Jared Allen went down, and let's look at their schedule. When Jared Allen went down, right, the Cavaliers at that point, Jared Allen played March 6th. That's where he got the fractured finger. So when Jared Allen went down, at that point, things started to go a little downhill for this basketball team. I mean, you look at, they were 37-27 at that point, the 6th seed in the East, and they were 3 games up on the 7th seed, the Toronto Raptors, at the time. We're talking about March 6th. So at March 6th, this team was 3 games up on the Toronto Raptors for the 6th spot in the Eastern Conference. That is March 6th. But Allen, obviously, he was out. He didn't play the rest of the way, and you just look at the record without Jared Allen, it slowly just dwindled, and ultimately it ended the season. They fell to the 7th seed, and then ultimately they fell to the 8th seed, and then ultimately, obviously, they were in the play-in tournament after falling the way they did. But again, with Jared Allen, I mean, at that point, 37-27, and again, 3 games up on the Raptors for the 6th spot in the Eastern Conference. So things were good for the Cavaliers at that point. And at that point, you look at that from my standpoint, when I saw March 6th and them beating Toronto and then them going up 3 games on Toronto, at that point, I'm thinking, okay, this team from this point on could really put themselves in position to get that 6th spot. But Toronto went out west, and they went like 5-0 on their West Coast trip. And then ultimately that put them back. And ultimately it led to them, catching the Cavs and ultimately surpassing the Cavs. And so, obviously it's a tough situation. It's a tough situation when you look at this season, because the season was, obviously it was a success. I think we all can walk away from this saying that the Cavaliers had a successful season. I think we can walk away with that. I think we can all walk away saying they had a successful season. Was it what everybody wanted in terms of the end? I think everybody wanted this team to be in the playoffs, not the play-in tournament. They wanted them to be in the playoffs. And the interesting part is when they acquired Karis LeVert, the thought process at that point was, you know what? This team could contend possibly for, in the Eastern Conference. They possibly could make a deep playoff run after the addition of Karis LeVert. I remember Rondo saying, this team has something special. This team could be special. Darius Garland saying at the time that Karis LeVert was the missing piece, he was the missing part, and he was the guy that could catapult this team into having a decent playoff run. That was the thought process at the time. But obviously, injuries and all these things happen. Jared Allen's injury happened. That was huge. LeVert's injury happened. I mean, Markkanen went down for a period of time. Garland, had the situation with the back coming off the All-Star break. A lot of these things factored into where the Cavs are here today in terms of their season being over, in terms of them now, instead of preparing for the Miami Heat, they're preparing for the offseason. Instead of going to Miami, they're going maybe farther in terms of vacations and things of that nature all over the country and all over the world. So it could have been different. It should have been different. But at the end of the day, it's over. It is over for the Cavaliers. And yes, the future is bright. Yes, Evan Mobley is special. Appears to be. Darius Garland took a huge leap. The leap that Darius Garland made this season was amazing. We expected near the end of last season, Garland, you saw him ascending. And then ultimately he made a big leap from where he was at the end of last season to becoming what he is now. Ultimately, he was an all-star, and ultimately he's turned himself into one of the better point guards in this game. So that's a good thing. That's a good thing for the Cleveland Cavaliers. You have building blocks. You have LeVert. You have Garland, you have Mobley. You have Jared Allen. You have building blocks. Jared Allen, signed a big contract in the offseason, and again, turned himself into an all-star. Another guy who turned himself into an all-star. So you got a lot of guys in terms of Mobley, in terms of Allen, in terms of Garland. You got the pieces now of a team that could be decent for years to come. Kevin Love believes, looking at this basketball team, that they could be elite for a good amount of time. This could be an elite basketball team because they're young. The youth is definitely on the side of the Cleveland Cavaliers at this point. Youth is on the side. They're young, they're talented, and again, J.B. Bickerstaff, he did a good job. I know a lot of people today are not happy with J.B. Bickerstaff in terms of what he did as a coach today, but at the end of the day, look, I think coming into the season, I think any Cavaliers fans would have said, if you told any Cavalier fan, guess what? You're going to win 44 games. You're going to be the 8th seed in the East. You'll have 2 chances to win 1 to get to the playoffs. I think most people would say, you know what? That's a successful season. I'm happy with that season. I'll take that. I think most people would take that. But I think the way this season went, where you were high, this team, they were playing some great basketball for periods of time throughout the course of this season. You can only overcome so many injuries. Whether it's Colin Sexton, whether it's Ricky Rubio, Markkanen again, Allen, you can only overcome so many injuries. And again, I point to the Jared Allen injury because at the time, they were 37-27. Jared Allen got hurt in this game right here against the Toronto Raptors. In that game, at the end of that game, Cleveland was 3 games up on the Raptors for the 6th spot in the Eastern Conference. At that point, you thought maybe they would hold the Raptors off. That was 18 games left at that point. 3 games up, 18 games left. But they lost Jared Allen, and the team was never the same after losing Jared Allen. They were never the same after losing Jared Allen. That was clear. This team was not the same team after Jared Allen went down. And you saw Jared Allen tonight, and Jared Allen, what he did, he looked good tonight. Jared Allen played well for what, he did what he could do. He did what he could do. He had one hand, and, he did the best he could with that one hand, right? But, Cavs as a whole looked lost down the stretch. You can make that argument, Abdul Smith, for sure. But again, you can only overcome so many things when it comes to these injuries. And I think we look at these injuries and we have to say it's a legitimate excuse. How many teams, they lost their starting 2 guard in Sexton. They lost their backup point guard in Rubio, who was having a good year, solid year, great year for the Cavaliers before he went down, right? You know, you lose your starting all-star center, Jared Allen, for a period of time, right? So Jared Allen at the time, 37-27 when Allen went down on March 6th. He missed the rest of the regular season and one game in the play-in tournament, ultimately played today. And then again, the season went down from there. Like, they overcame Rubio. They overcame Sexton. They overcame all of these things, but they couldn't overcome Jared Allen. That just was too much. And the team suffered without Jared Allen. They suffered without Jared Allen. They were a different team without Jared Allen. And again, you saw Jared Allen, what he brought to the table tonight with one hand. I mean, with one hand, Jared Allen and what he brought to the table was special. It was solid. It was solid. Special might be a little bit of a stretch, but it was solid when it comes to Jared Allen and what he did tonight. Jared Allen did his job tonight to the best of his ability with one hand. And he tried, he fought, he battled, but he had one hand. And you saw, he was grimacing near the end. Even when he had that two-handed dunk, right? You saw that two-handed dunk. He kind of pulled back on the injured hand when he dunked there. So he was clearly hurt. He was clearly a hurt player tonight. He was clearly a limited player tonight. And ultimately, it just didn't get the job done. It wasn't enough to get the job done. JB should have played Stevens and Jetty Osman. I mean, Okoro gave him good minutes tonight. I mean, Isaac Okoro gave this team some decent minutes tonight. And I was, critical of Okoro the other night. I mean, Okoro did not bring it against the Brooklyn Nets the other day. But he was solid tonight. He did his job. Isaac Okoro did his job tonight, right? I think Isaac Okoro did what he needed to do tonight. You look at Okoro looking at the final box score tonight. You look at Isaac Okoro in 22 minutes, basically 6 points, 5 rebounds. That's solid. I mean, no one is going to expect Isaac Okoro to be a big-time scorer. No one. What you want out of Okoro's big-time defense, you want him to be able to play defense and do what he has to do. But outside of that, the points when it comes to Isaac Okoro are gravy. It really is. I mean, I always said if Isaac Okoro, when he comes out and when he plays and when he's hitting those corner threes, this team is tough to beat. But, obviously he's been inconsistent with that. But we look at the box score. Darius Garland, he ended up with 21 points, 9 assists, but he struggled with his shot, 9 for 27 from the field. So he struggled with his shot tonight. Lauri Markkanen. I mean, this guy came out with a purpose. He came out with the thought process that he was going to do any and everything to lead this team and try to get this team to Miami. But and he played well. I mean, he was hitting his open threes. He got some good looks. And in that first half, Cleveland got a lot of good looks. I mean, they scored 61 points in the first half, but Atlanta tightened the screws a little bit, and they only scored 40 points in the second half. So 61 in the first, 40 points in the second half. You look at it here, 23-point third quarter, 17-point fourth quarter. And again, give the Hawks a lot of credit, but also give Trae Young a lot of credit. I mean, Trae Young was special tonight. Trae Young was absolutely amazing. Yes, you talk about the shot clock violations in that fourth. The offense definitely got stagnant. It got stagnant, and they were running the position when they were running down like you said, running down the shot clock, and they were taking 9-1-1 shots. And unfortunately, they weren't making those 9-1-1 shots. And so that did hurt, those shot clock violations and their inability. The offense got stagnant there, and credit to the Hawks in terms of their defense. But yes, the offense got stagnant. But you also look at it this way, right? You look at the Hawks, and this is a team that can score. The Hawks have not been that great on the defensive end this year, but they can score. And at some point, the Cavs kept going back and forth with them. But once, they took the lead, I mean, my thought process, even when they tied it and then ultimately took the lead there, I'm thinking, okay, it's not looking good. And just Trae Young. Trae Young is an absolute weapon. Trae Young is a weapon. I mean, it's tough to contain this guy when he's on the court. His ability, obviously, to make those logo threes, his ability to make deep threes, those Steph Curry like threes, he has unlimited range. So his ability in that unlimited range obviously makes him tough to guard. And obviously, he's quick, he's fast, and he can get to the basket, has a great float game. So Trae Young is a special player. We saw Trae Young last year, lead the Hawks to the Eastern Conference Finals. And we saw Trae Young today, do what he had to do to lead the Hawks to the playoffs, lead the Hawks to Miami. Trae Young is a special player. And let's be real. Let's look at it. I heard Jalen Rose say this before the game, and it's a good point. You look at Atlanta, their season would not have been a success if they lost today. Conversely, you look at the Cavaliers, them, losing today, them even being in this spot is a success. Now, at the same time, when I even say it was a success, I kind of struggle with that. I struggle with that from this standpoint. While I'll say this season was a success, it's a little difficult to say it was you're saying it's a success, but you're not saying it, I think, loudly and proudly, because I just think from this standpoint, the way you started. This team at one point, third, fourth in the East at one point. This team, again, injuries caught up to this ball club, but man, this team, again, March 6th, 3 games up, on March 6th, when Jared Allen went out with the fractured finger, and they beat the Raptors at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. On March 6th, you look at that point, the Cavaliers were up 3 games on the Raptors, and they had the 6th spot. And again, them obviously not being able to hold the 6th spot is clearly a disappointment. It's a disappointment. It's a disappointment. So I can say and sit here and say that this season is a success, and it is, but it's kind of a disappointment at the same time. It's a success, but it's a disappointment. Because again, you got this far. You won 44 games, great, right? But we were, again, when this team acquired Caris LeVert, there was a lot of excitement in Cleveland after the acquisition of Caris LeVert. And a lot of teams, like I said, Rondo was saying, this team may have something special. And Darius Garland was saying, again, LeVert is the missing piece. He could be the missing piece, the missing link. He's the guy that could propel us to doing maybe big things in the Eastern Conference. And then, LeVert goes down. And it's just, you can only overcome so many injuries to your core guys. You can only overcome so many injuries. You were asking a lot of this team to overcome some of the injuries that they've had this season. It's a lot. And for them to get to this point, I guess it's a success, but I think it's a disappointment at the same time because of what and where they were. For them, it would have been great for them to get that 7-game series. It would have been great for them to play the Miami Heat in the first round. And look, I'm not saying they beat the Heat, but I think this team could compete. They competed all year long. They beat some good teams along the way this season, right? This team competed. But you just look at some of these losses. Detroit twice. That loss to the Magic near the end of the season. Those losses are tough to overcome. You got to win those games. You got to win those games. Those are the games that you got to win. You got to beat the Pistons of the world. You got to beat the Pistons. You can't lose to the Pistons twice. You got to beat the Magic in that spot. You can't lose to the Orlando Magic in that spot near the end of the season when your season is on the line to a degree in terms of you trying to secure that 7th seed. Now, I'll say this. Even if they would have secured the 7th seed, do you think they would have beat Brooklyn? I don't know about that. Let's say Brooklyn is 8. Do they beat Brooklyn? I don't know. But, and so, can we say that, are the Hawks better than the Cavaliers? I thought throughout the course of the season, the Cavaliers were the better basketball team. But coming into this season, we thought the Atlanta Hawks, a team that went to the Eastern Conference Finals a year ago, was a legitimate contender in the Eastern Conference, for sure. I think everybody thought that. And, along the way, they had some injuries of their own, and they didn't really gel, really didn't click. And look, they were without John Collins tonight, and, obviously they lost Clint Capella. So they, weren't out. They were without some of their big pieces tonight, and they still found a way. And that way is Trae Young. That's Trae Young. That's what he does. That's what he brings to the table. That is a superstar caliber player in Trae Young. I mean, you make your name in the playoffs. And last year, Trae Young made a name for himself. He went to New York City, and became a villain in Madison Square Garden, but he shut that Garden crowd up. He went to Philadelphia, became a villain in Philadelphia, but at the end of the day, he shut that crowd up. I mean, you look at what he did in Game 7 against the 76ers. So, I mean, it's impressive. And so this guy, he's one of the better players in this league. And his ability to get to the basket, his ability to shoot those threes makes him a tough guard. It just makes this guy a tough guard. So, Trae Young is a special player, and that was on full display tonight. Trae Young and his ability to do anything he wanted to do and get anywhere he wanted to go on that court. And I mean, they were, the pick and rolls. Mark Jackson kept talking about over and over and over again in terms of the switch. Maybe you don't switch. And it just, Trae Young just adjusted, man. The kid adjusted. I mean, he only, 6 points at halftime, and then he woke up. He woke up and he scored 32 big points in the second half. 32 big points. I mean, Trae Young, you look at Trae Young, Trae Young at halftime, this guy was struggling to make shots. He was struggling to make shots and struggling to put the ball in the basket. At halftime, Trae Young was 3 for 11 for 6 points, right? 0 for 4 from downtown, and he had 4 turnovers. That's at the halftime. That's at halftime. And, you're obviously thinking you're the Cavaliers. You're doing a great job on Trae Young. You're shutting him down to this point. But, the funny thing, I'm not saying Trae Young is Allen Iverson, but Trae Young is special. Allen Iverson used to have crazy games where he would just be couldn't buy a bucket. But then Allen Iverson would wake up, he would go crazy, and he would put up a bunch of points. And then ultimately, you look at the stat line at the end of the day, he did his job, and the Sixers would win. Like, Trae Young, this dude scored 15 points in the third, so he started to wake up. He woke up in the third, right? And it continued in the fourth quarter for Trae Young. I mean, he continued to battle, continued to play at an elite level, 16 points in the fourth quarter. So he kept it going, kept balling, kept getting it done. And at the end of the day, in the second half, 10 for 14, 4 for 7 from downtown, 32 big points, 5 assists, and he had 4 turnovers in that first half, no turnovers in the second half. That is just greatness. That is greatness when it comes to Trae Young and his ability to make plays. That is just greatness. You're held down for most of the game. You're not playing well for most of the game. You're not getting it done for most of the game. And then you wake up and you start getting it done. You start making plays. You start making shots, right? He assisted and scored on 27 of the team's 33 points in the third quarter. So 27 of the Hawks' 33 points in that third was either a Trae Young bucket or a Trae Young assist. So that's greatness, man. That's where you make your name in these playoffs. And just, everybody's, you got some people complaining about the play-in tournament. I know LeBron complained about it last year and so on and so forth. But this is exciting. We got some good basketball tonight. So you can love the play-in tournament, but it makes something like in previous years, no one cared about seeds 7 through 10. Who cares about seeds 7 through 10? Because seeds 7 through 10 have no shot of winning an NBA title. So no one cared. So now you have the play-in tournament, and seeds 7 through 10 are in the play-in tournament. It makes something that is unexciting, unappealing in terms of seeds 7 through 10, the play-in tournament, makes it very exciting. And now, people who didn't care about seed 7 through 10 do care now and are excited to watch this brand of. It's exciting basketball. It's like March Madness to a degree because of the finality of it. It's win or go home. And the Cavs had two opportunities in terms of win and go home, and they lost both of them. They went home after losing twice. They had two chances, two opportunities, two moments, two situations to put themselves in position to get to the playoffs, and they just could not do it. Just could not do it. And again, I mean, is this season a success? Is it a success? I mean, everybody has different opinions in terms of whether this season was a success for the Cavaliers, whether this season, whether the fans got what they wanted from this season. I said before, I struggle with that. I do struggle with saying this season is a complete success because of how everything went down and how everything started. Now, again, no one expected this. This was unexpected. This was an unexpected situation. No one expected this team to be in this position. I think Vegas, had them the most days, had them 27 games. So if you bet the odds at the beginning of the year, you may have made a little money along the way in terms of the Cavaliers. But at this point, they're ascending. They seem to be ascending. This is a team on the rise. The Cavs are a team on the rise at this point. You wonder what's going to happen with Colin Sexton in the offseason. He's around the team a lot. I mean, I think for the alumni, I forgot what game that was where they honored some of the alumni there. He was on the court helping giving out the awards and things of that nature. So that kind of tells me that in some way, shape, or form, he's going to be back. I know he's a restricted free agent. But, you do have to look at it from this standpoint. At some point, Garland, is going to be eligible for a max contract. So, you're going to have to give him that. He's going to have to get his max dollars. I mean, he's played himself into a max contract. A couple years from now, you're going to have to pay Evan Mobley. The way he's playing, he's going to turn himself, and it looks like he's going to get, a very big contract. Obviously, you have Jared Allen in the books. You just signed him in the offseason, 5 years, $100 million. You got Lowry Markkanen, who you signed the sign and trade situation. So, and ultimately Kevin Love's going to be coming off the books. You got one more year, Kevin Love at $28 million next year. So he's going to be coming off the books at some point in time. Karis LeVert is under contract. All right, he is eligible also for an extension, but he is under contract for next season. Do you play it out and see what he's going to be, or do you try to lock him up, lock him down, and maybe you get a discounted rate? Because if Karis LeVert next season plays, out of his mind, then, his contract demands obviously are going to go up. You pay him now, you may not have to pay him as much as you would have to pay him in the future. So they got to figure all these things out. Obviously, you can't pay everybody. There's a salary cap. You can't pay everybody. But, they got to figure it out. And this is a team, yes, they're on a rise. And yes, they surprised a lot of people this season. But they're not surprising anybody next year. People are not going to be surprised about the Cavaliers next season. They know that this team is going to be a decent team. They know anytime you go to Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse, you're going to have to be at your best. They know that anytime, you go to, anytime this team comes to your arena, you're going to have to be your best. So, I mean, the Cavaliers are a team that is definitely on the rise, but they're not going to surprise anyone any longer. And at the same time, it is what it is. It comes with success. Would you rather be a team that won 22 games, or would you rather be a team that won 44 games, played in the play-in tournament, they got a taste of playoff basketball. They got a taste of playoff basketball. And, it's a next level brand of basketball. When you play playoff basketball, it's next level. And so the things that you have to do to be successful in the playoffs are a little different than what you have to do to be successful in the regular season. And this team has never experienced that. This team doesn't know what that felt like. This team hasn't been a part of anything like that until now. Right? They haven't been a part of anything like that until now. And again, you want your young guys to get that experience because it's great experience for them to figure out and understand what it takes to win in the playoffs. Star power wins in the playoffs. And that's what we saw tonight. Darius Garland is going to be a star. But he was, Trae Young outshined him tonight. Trae Young outshined him tonight. Trae Young was special tonight. But that doesn't take away from the season that Darius Garland had. That doesn't take away from what happened tonight, what he did tonight. Darius Garland wasn't bad, but he didn't make a lot. He was 9 for 27 from the field, so he did struggle a little bit with his shot. But what happened tonight was the greatness of Trae Young. This was Trae Young's night. Cleveland came out, Cleveland did what I think many expected them to do. They fed off that crowd. They came out and they punched the Hawks in the mouth. Cleveland came out and punched the Hawks in the mouth, but the Hawks, ultimately, they weathered the storm. They weathered the storm, right? The Hawks weathered the storm, and ultimately, they were in that second half, they were able to pick up their play. They kept themselves within striking distance, right? They kept themselves within striking distance, and again, at the end of the day, in that second half, they picked their play. 61-51 at the break, but based on the way things were going and based on the way the Cavaliers were playing, you would have thought that maybe they had a bigger lead. You would have thought that the Cavaliers may have had a bigger lead at that point, at that time. But they didn't. And the Hawks stayed close. 61-51 is in striking distance. You're in striking distance in Cleveland, and the Atlanta Hawks were in striking distance at that point, that time. And then you look at it, if you look at what you saw at halftime, your best player, Trae Young, only had 6 points. And in addition to that, you lost your big in Clint Capella. You lost Clint Capella, which, didn't turn out to be a huge loss because they were able to figure it out. Right? They were able to figure it out and get it done. They were able to figure it all out and get it done and find ways to get it done and make things happen. They made things happen and they got the job done. But again, the future is still bright in Cleveland. The future is still bright in Cleveland. The Cavs, I think they should keep their heads up. They keep their heads up based on what happened this season. A season that had a lot of trials and tribulations. Markkanen also missed time for COVID, right? You had the COVID, and I don't know if COVID is going away. I don't know. It appears that it's still going to be around, right? You look at Paul George tonight. Paul George isn't playing tonight because of health and safety protocols. So COVID is still a factor and still may be a factor next season. COVID still may be a factor next season. I don't know if COVID is going anywhere at this point in time. So, every team, everybody, every person has dealt with COVID in some way, shape, or form, whether you had it, know someone who had it, so on and so forth. So that's just not going anywhere. It's not. So, but again, you want to see what happens. Look, Karis LeVert came in February, came at the trade deadline. Now, if you're bringing him back, which, again, he's under contract for next season. But, if you're running with him, you figure out LeVert, okay, all right, get him a full training camp together with this team, get acclimated with this team. Because, again, he really didn't have a time to really get acclimated with the Cavs because he got hurt, and missed time there. So, obviously he was kind of in and out of the lineup to a degree. So he didn't necessarily have the time to really get acclimated with this ball club and acclimated with this team. Now, he give him a full training camp together, figure out his strengths, his weaknesses in terms of where it works and how it works with your particular ball club, and then kind of go from there. But you got that full training camp now to figure it all out, determine what you need to do with LeVert in terms of making him and everything work there. Again, Sexton is a restricted free agent. In theory, you can match any offer that a team throws at him. And will it be, coming off an injury, will teams throw a lot of money at him? Will teams think, he averaged 24 points last season, but is he a type of guy that's, going to put up big numbers on a bad team? right? Or is he legit? Is he big time? Is he what we think he could be? And that's something, that's going to be interesting. What kind of offers he has? He did sign with Clutch Sports, so as he goes into restricted free agency, he is with Clutch Sports and Rich Paul and those guys over there. So he's going to try to figure out what he wants to do. Like I said, the guy's been around the team for a while now, and it appears that he wants to be a part of this, the Cavaliers, and it appears, based on the way, again, him handing out, I don't know how much you can read into that, but I mean, him handing out awards, to the alumni and things of that nature, like that means something, right? You're not going to have a guy around, with your alumni if you don't think he's going to be around. Man, that's my thought process. So, but again, I don't think you can't overpay for Sexton. And I don't know if Darius Garland would have made the leap that he made this year with Sexton in the lineup. I don't know. But I will say this. Garland was ascending at the end of last season. So him, becoming better is not a super surprise, but I think the leap that he took, he took a huge leap. I think I saw, I think it was ESPN's list, top 20 players, 25 players, I think under 25. I believe he was 6. So that's a huge situation. Like the way he's viewed in terms of around the league is totally different than the way he was viewed at the end of last season. Again, at the end of last season, a lot of people say he was ascending. Now he has ascended, and again, he has shown that he is a star. He's got star potential. He's a star, and he's a kid that is probably only going to get better. It seems to have the work ethic that it takes. JB talked about his work ethic. JB talked about his belief that Garland could become a better player next season. He could make that next step. And Evan Mobley is only going to get better. Evan Mobley is going to get better. His skill set. The guy just contributes to winning. Evan Mobley is a winning player. Evan Mobley is a guy that just makes plays on both ends of the court. He's a decent passer. He has a decent jump shot. His post game isn't awful. Has a nice jump hook, right? And obviously, what he does on the defensive end in terms of the block shots and everything. The guy seems to have it all, and the mental makeup seems to be there, right? The mental makeup of Evan Mobley doesn't get fazed, doesn't get bothered. Nothing, seems to agitate this guy, seems to frustrate this guy. Nothing seems to bother Evan Mobley. So Evan Mobley, you look at the skill set and you look at, 20 years old. So the kid is only going to get better. He's only going to get better. And so that is a huge building block for the Cavaliers. Evan Mobley and what he does and what he brings to the table and what he can do. Evan Mobley has a lot of ability. And I just think this kid is only going to get better. And then you look at the roster and what the Cavaliers have. You look at the roster and the youth. Now, it's just not youth, it's talented youth, right? These guys are talented. Jared Allen's only going to be 24 next week, right? You look at, obviously, Darius Garland, 22, right? Karis LeVert, 27. You look at Lauri Markkanen, 24. Evan Mobley, 20 years old. Isaac Okoro, 21 years old. And, there's ability there. Obviously, Isaac Okoro has to get better on the offensive end. Isaac Okoro has to figure out he's got to work on his handle. He's got to work on his shot creation. Isaac Okoro has to be able to create better. He's got to become a better shot creator. He's a big-time defender. He's a top-notch defender. He brings it on the defensive end. But Isaac Okoro has to figure it out on the offensive end. Isaac Okoro has to work on that handle in the offseason. He's got to work on his shot creation, and he has to become better at creating his own shot. I see a lot of Andre Iguodala in his game. I see a lot of Iguodala in Isaac Okoro's game. And you could argue that Andre Iguodala, when it's all said and done, based on, some of the championships that he's won and things of that nature. Isaac Okoro is a guy that you look at him. I mean, he's got to do better in terms of his shot creation, but he's a solid defender, right? He's a solid defender. Decent passer, bro. Really? Who we talking about? Evan Mobley? Yeah, Evan Mobley is a decent passer. Evan Mobley is a decent passer. So I think that's a lot of parts to his game. Got a lot of parts to his game. Now again, back to Okoro. Again, I think Okoro has to work on shot creation. He's got to work on being able to. He's got to work on his handle. He's got to work on that part. He's got to work on that part of his game, his handle, so he can become a better shot creator. And I liked them putting LeVert in the starting lineup today. They had LeVert. Before it was Okoro, but they had LeVert when they brought Jared Allen back. But they had LeVert. In the starting lineup at the 2 guard spot, and I like him there. I like him there because you got another shot creator, and as they go into next season, you cannot have, let's look at the teams who are the big teams in this league, right? Phoenix, Chris Paul and Devin Booker, elite shot creators. Those are elite shot creators. You look at Brooklyn, for example. Kyrie and Kevin Durant, elite shot creators. We look at the favorites. James Harden, has struggled a little bit in Philly, but in his past, and he's still averaging 22 points. He was averaging 22 points when he came over from Brooklyn. James Harden is an elite shot creator, and obviously Joel Embiid, we know he is. So you can never have too many shot creators. You can never have too many of that. You can't have too many. You're never going to have too many shot creators. And so they have to, maybe they do need another shot creator. And look, maybe Sexton is that guy. In terms of if let's say you decide you want to bring Sexton back, and let's just say you decide, you're willing to give him, the contract. And obviously, I don't think he's not going to get max dollars. But let's just say you give him 4 years, $80 million. Let's just go on that premise. Obviously, you can't pay everybody. But Colin Sexton might be better as a sixth man, right? He might be better with giving you instant offense off the bench. That might be a great role for Colin Sexton going forward. Who knows? Again, we don't know what the market could be. He is a restricted free agent. We don't know what the market will be for Sexton, next season, in the offseason, in the summer. We don't know. But again, he's a decent shot creator. So Cleveland, again, the future is bright. Cleveland, again, the fan base in Cleveland should be happy. Yes, obviously it's a disappointment to lose today. Yes, obviously it's a disappointment that you're not going to be in the playoffs. But, and yes, you could be disappointed about how they went and how they played so well this season, how they were, one of the top 6 teams for a long period of time before everything fell off. You can talk about that as well in terms of being disappointed, but I don't think anybody expected this team to really be where they're at today. No one expected that. But I think it is a gut punch the way it ended today. It is a gut punch, even the way the flow of the game was. The flow of the game where, they had the 14-point lead. The flow of the game where, you were up 10 at the break. The flow of the game where you were up for most of the game until the third, right? The flow of this game was you were up throughout, and then you just kind of let up and let it go at the end there. And Trae Young just overwhelmed this team down the stretch. Trae Young, no answer for Trae Young, but again, there's nothing wrong with that. There's not many teams who have answers for Trae Young, right? You saw what he did last season. You saw how he ran through teams and got this Atlanta Hawks team to the Eastern Conference Finals last season. You saw that. We saw that. Everyone saw that. So it's like, it's not a surprise or a shock that the Cavs lost to the Atlanta Hawks. It's not a surprise or a shock. And let's be real, the Hawks are a more battle-tested team. That run alone last season, that was a legitimate run. That was a big time run. That was a hard, tough run for that team. And they battled, man. The Atlanta Hawks are a battle tested team. You look at last year and the road wins they got last year in the playoffs. You look at last year, how they go into Philly in a game 7 in the second round of the playoffs, and they make it to the Eastern Conference Final. They beat Philly, the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. So that is all you need to know about the Atlanta Hawks and them being battle tested. This is a battle tested team. This is a battle tested team. Really is. A battle tested team in the Atlanta Hawks. So there's nothing wrong in terms of losing to the Hawks. I don't think you put your head down because you lost to the Hawks, a team that is battle tested, a team that's been through a lot of wars, and a team, that went to the Eastern Conference Finals last season. Mark Jackson talked about the switch and them switching. And Trae Young, he was taking advantage of it, man. He was eating them alive. I mean, they just had no answer for Trae Young at that moment, that point in that time. And he just, the guy just went off. And again, it becomes very difficult. It becomes very difficult when you have a guy that can shoot from the logo. He becomes a tough guard when he can shoot shots from the logo. And his ability to shoot shots from the logo makes him tough. And oh, by the way, great handle, obviously a great guy, get to the basket, and can finish around the basket, has a great float game. So it becomes difficult. Atlanta's a bad matchup for Cleveland. I think the season series was 3-1. So yeah, the season series tells you that yes, this was a bad matchup for the Cavs. And I thought it was a bad matchup. I thought as a Cavs fan, you would want the Hornets to beat the Hawks in that spot the other night. Because of how battle-tested the Atlanta Hawks are, and then just the matchup in general. The Hawks are a battle-tested team. And Cleveland hasn't experienced what the Hawks have experienced. Cleveland hasn't went through what the Hawks have went through. Right? We talked about the age of a lot of these guys, but also in terms of experience. The experience came from Kevin Love. The experience came from Rondo. And we saw, I thought we saw a playoff Rondo against the Nets, but today we saw regular season Rondo, which isn't bad, obviously, because Rondo, at the end, you could argue, could be a Hall of Fame player. But you saw Rondo, when he was on the court, just did not do what he just did not bring it today. He didn't bring it today. And he was a -6, had a -6 rating today. He just didn't bring it for the Cavaliers. I believe he had a +2 rating the other night against Brooklyn. One of the few players. Him and LeVert were the 2 players that were, in terms of plus-minus, that were plus for the Cavaliers. Rondo was a +2, I believe, the other night. Tonight was a -6, and he just didn't play well. He didn't play well. And you look at early in the fourth, Nate McMillan rested Trae Young, brought Trae Young back earlier in the fourth. Ultimately JB took out Garland. Rondo came in, a couple possessions. JB called timeout, brought Garland right back in. So the rest was not very long for Darius Garland. And then Darius Garland came back in. And again, he tried to finish. And they were there. And then Lowry, he got the rebound there. He tried to make that pass. Kevin Huerter made that steal, which is a huge steal. That pretty much wrapped it up at that point. It was 102.99, I believe, at the time. Huerter got the steal. Ultimately got fouled. I think Trae Young got fouled. And that was pretty much a wrap at that point. And that was tough. That was tough because you had the possession. My thought was, it seemed like Markkanen was a little unsure of what he wanted to do. I always thought called timeout in that spot. I know you had 2 timeouts at the time, and I know you kind of want to preserve your timeouts in that spot, but obviously you needed the possession. And I believe JB said in the post game that he had Atlanta kind of scattered at that point. All defense wasn't set up, so they wanted to kind of run there and kind of get a point, get something there in that spot. But it didn't work out. Ultimately, obviously, it turned into a steal. Huerter got the steal, and ultimately, we all know Trae Young got fouled. I believe he made 2 free throws at that spot, And again, that pretty much was the ball game. That was the end. I mean, again, I think it was a gut punch. I think this game was a gut punch. I think if you're a Cavaliers fan, you felt that gut punch, that punch in the belly, right? Because of how things went this season. The ups, the downs, the highs and the lows, the great start, right? Again, like when this team, I believe earlier in the season, they lost the first two games. They were 1-2 at the time. They went out west, and they got it done. They got it done out west, and it was impressive out west. And at that point, you thought maybe this team could do something special, right? And then they come back, and I believe they were in New York. They were 7-4 at one point after 11 games. Colin Sexton, the meniscus injury. Losing him again. I don't know if that was. I don't want to say it's a good thing, but at the same time, I don't know if Darius Garland would have ascended the way he ascended with Colin Sexton alive. I'm not sure about that, and I'm not so sure about that. I don't know, but he does have something that they could need, and that's a bucket. Colin Sexton is a bucket, a walking bucket, as JB Bickerstaff likes to say when it comes to Colin Sexton. You were talking about, I believe, Isaac Okoro. You're talking about LeVert in that spot. I thought you saw something with Isaac Okoro somewhere. I saw it somewhere. But anyway, yeah. I mean, Isaac Okoro obviously is a better defender. It's arguably the team's best on-ball defender. But it doesn't bring anything. I think they needed LeVert's shot creation and LeVert's ability to get to the basket and LeVert's ability to score. And, Okoro has a lot of decent qualities, but shot creation is not one of his strengths. And it's something, again, he's got to work on. And again, he's got against Brooklyn, right? He had 3 shots. Again, it's only 3 shots, but they were open looks. I believe they were all threes. He missed them all. He just didn't give him anything in that particular game, but he had a nice bounce back game tonight. He played solid. He was solid tonight off the Cavalier bench. I mean, Lamar Stevens didn't get any run. Jetty Osman didn't get any run tonight. I like Lamar Stevens' game. I mean, he's tough, right? He's a grinder, decent defender. I like Lamar Stevens' game. And Jetty can get hot. Jetty can get hot from downtown and can put the ball in the basket at times, right? Jetty has done that at times. And then, other times near the end of the season, it seemed like he was in J.B. Bickerstaff's doghouse because there were some DMPs there down the stretch. I know Dylan Windler got some time over him down the stretch at times. And, obviously Lamar Stevens took some of his time as well. But, I mean, you just look at this team, you look at this season, and it just became evident and obvious that injuries just was too much for this team to overcome. It just was too much. I would agree with that, LeVert. LeVert, his ability to put the ball in the basket and his reliability, I expected more for Caris LeVert at this point, at this time. And again, I know injuries played a factor in terms of him, acclimating with his teammates and everything. But I did expect more. I did expect more from LeVert. And again, I repeat. I said this before. I repeat again. Rondo and Darius Garland at the time, the addition of LeVert, those guys were excited. They were super excited about the possibilities. And Rondo at the time was talking about how. And when Rondo speaks, you listen because the guy's won 2 NBA titles. Rondo's won 2 NBA titles and was a big part of those NBA titles, especially with the Celtics. But when Rondo speaks, you listen. And Rondo was saying, well, he felt maybe this team had the ability to be special. This team could be special. It could be a special basketball team in Cleveland. He saw special when he looked at this basketball team. He saw a team that could be special. That's what Rondo said. That was at the time, around the time they acquired LeVert in February. But didn't work out. It didn't work out. Injuries just were just too numerous to overcome. I mean, this team easily, I think if Jared Allen was healthy, we're having a different conversation. If Jared Allen was healthy, we're having a different conversation. We're having a different conversation at this point, right? We're having a different conversation. We're saying at this point, well, this team would be one of the top 6 teams. At this point, they wouldn't even be in the play-in tournament. They wouldn't even have to worry about the play-in tournament, right? But didn't happen. Stuff happened. Things get in the way. Reality of basketball. Like here's the thing, man. Part of this thing in terms of winning an NBA title is health. Health has to be on your side if you want to win an NBA title. It has to be on your side, right? I mean, look at Chris Paul and all the times that he ran into health. I mean, they had the Warriors when he was in Houston. I believe they were up 3-2. He hurt his hamstring and he just couldn't come back and be successful. Health impacted the Rockets in that particular spot. Health gets in the way. It happens, man. Health has to be on your side in order to win an NBA title. It has to be on your side. And look at the Golden State Warriors in 2019 when Clay went down, when Kevin Durant went down. Durant tore his Achilles and Klay Thompson tore his ACL. Health wasn't on the side of the Golden State Warriors. Health was on the side of the Toronto Raptors, and that's one of the reasons they won that NBA title. I don't believe, and I think a lot of people believe the same thing, if Durant and Klay Thompson were healthy, that the Toronto Raptors would have won that NBA title. I don't believe it. Golden State with Kevin Durant was like next level unstoppable. They were a tough team to beat with Kevin Durant. Like, obviously, they won 73 games without Kevin Durant, but when you add Kevin Durant to that, man, that made that situation darn near unstoppable. Darn near unstoppable. All right, you felt like the team became too predictable. Garland had to carry too much of the load, which he, at times he did. Too many guys tonight unable to shoot or not willing to shoot in terms of Rondo, Isaac, J.A. Proud of this team. Still definitely a successful year. I mean, yes, it is a successful year. I mean, but a disappointment at the same time. It was a success, but still a disappointment at the same time. I think those two things can be the same. I think those two things can be synonymous. I mean, I think we together we could say that this season was a success, but at the same time it was a disappointment. Because the play-in tournament wasn't a part of the plan when they acquired certain guys. I mean, it just wasn't a part of the plan. The play-in tournament, I didn't, like I said, March 6th. March 6th is the moment they beat the Toronto Raptors. And they went 3 games up on the Toronto Raptors with 18 games to play. But at that point, in that time, that's what Jarrett Allen got. He got hurt in that game. Fractured his finger in that game. And that was it. In terms of, this team struggled. I believe they were 9-17 without Jarrett Allen. And I believe they were 35-20 with Jarrett Allen in the lineup. So it's like, man, what if? I mean, it's just so many what ifs when it comes to this team. What if Jarrett Allen stayed healthy? What if? So many what ifs when it comes to this team. And unfortunately, it didn't happen. So they were 35-21 with Jarrett Allen starting in the lineup. That's 14 games over 500. So 14 games over 500 where Jarrett Allen's in the lineup, 35-21. That is, 14 games over 500. Obviously you're not in the play-in tournament. 14 games over 500. You're not. So 14 games over 500, you're not in the play-in tournament. And so with Jarrett Allen on the court, this team was 35-21. 35-21. So Jarrett Allen on the court, well, they were good. They were solid. They did their job. They were good enough. Now, you look at, Chicago is 46-36. So 10 games over 500 with Jarrett Allen. 56 games with 35-21, excuse me. I mean, that he's a winning player. And obviously with the three bigs, his athletic ability, Mobley's athletic ability, and Markkanen's versatility. And the three bigs had a lot of versatility. They had a lot of versatility when it came with those three bigs. Markkanen could at times could play the five, right? He could play all three spots. At times, obviously could play the four, and he played the three. So, and Mobley's his athleticism, his size. Obviously, we've seen him at the five, we've seen him at the four, and then Jarrett Allen's his ability, his athleticism as well. So this team, in terms of their bigs, were very athletic. They were very athletic. In terms of the bigs and what they brought to the table and the versatility of those bigs. But, again, Jarrett Allen was one of the guys who made that thing special, made that thing go, made that thing click, made that thing successful. And not having him on the basketball court, for the final 18 games of the regular season is tough, man. It's a tough thing to stomach. It's a tough thing to stomach. It's a tough thing to deal with, but it is what it is. Cavs season was fun though. A very young team. We make it to the playoffs next year. Yes, I think any Cavalier fan will say this team was fun, right? JB Bickerstaff said tonight that this is the most fun he's had as in the NBA. During his time in the NBA, it's the most fun he's had. So this group was a lot of fun, and this team was a lot of fun. The youthful energy that this team had. They were a lot of fun. And they surprised and shocked a lot of people being in this spot, being in this situation. And again, I say, before I said it before, I say it again, if I would have told you that the Cavs would have won 44 games, if I would have told you that they would have been in the play-in tournament, you would have signed up for that. They've been the eighth seed in the East and been in the play-in tournament. You would have signed up probably right then and there. You'd have signed your life. You might even signed your life away at that point, right? You would have signed up for that. I think most people would if you're a Cavs fan. You would have signed up for that because, again, Vegas had them, 27 games? So for them to win 44 games and surprise and shock a lot of people, come on. I think, most Cavs fan would have signed up for that at that moment, at that point. They would have been like, where can I sign? Can I sign today? Can I sign today? Can I do it? Can I do it? Yeah, and Watershed, big experience, big expectation for them next year. We were playing with house money this entire season. It's a good point. Now, let's talk about that, right? It's a lot easier when the expectations aren't the same. Coming into the season, the expectations weren't for the Cavs to make it to the play-in tournament. That most people thought this team would struggle mightily this season. Not many expected this team to be very good, right? I don't know how many people expected the Cavs to win 44 games and be in the play-in tournament. So now, next season, well, guess what? The expectations change. Now, you go into next season, well, you're expected to win 44-plus games next season. It's a little different than when you won 22 games last year. You come into this season with no expectation. Now the pressure is on. The pressure is on you now. The pressure is on you, Darius Garland, to get better, get even better than you were this year in the offseason. The pressure is on you, Evan Mobley, to get better. The pressure is on you, Jarrett Allen, to get better. And Darius Garland got better. Jarrett Allen got better. So all those guys got better this season. But again, no one expected them coming into the season to win 44 games. So the expectations become different. And when the pressure is on, the expectations change. Sometimes, the on-court performance changes. Like, for example, we look at these Atlanta Hawks, for example. The Atlanta Hawks came into this last year. Not many, if any, expected the Atlanta Hawks to be in the Eastern Conference Finals last season. They come into this year, the expectations now raise. And at times, the Atlanta Hawks struggled. There were some injuries along the way, but at times, the Atlanta Hawks struggled. They started playing better near the end of the season, but they struggled at times during this season. So the expectations for the Atlanta Hawks changed, and there were some struggles. Now, I'm not saying the struggles was because of the expectations, but who knows? So next season for the Cleveland Cavaliers, the expectations now have changed. So 44-38 might not be acceptable next year. It was acceptable this year, but 44-38 might not be acceptable next year. I think everybody is expecting this team to make that leap. You look at it and the success they had this season. Well, Kobe Altman, got a contract, got a new contract. You also got a new title, new position. Higher title, higher position. JB Bickerstaff got a contract, right? And that was all based on the success that this team had this season. And clearly, it appears that this rebuild is on the right track. And I think in a lot of ways, they kind of, no one expected them to be at this point this season. And so they surprised people, they shocked people, and they put themselves in position, obviously, to continue to, obviously, they're rebuilding and getting better and improving. And ultimately, you want this team to be a contending team. I said before, Kevin Love said this team can be elite because of the youth and the young talent that they have. Kevin Love believes this team could be elite for a long time. Kevin Love believes this team could be elite for a long time. You talk about Spurs, Cavs, Hornets, Pelicans, Rockets, Thunder, got very bright futures. Watch out for them teams. I don't know about the Spurs. I know there is some talent there, but is there enough talent where they're making that leap in the Western Conference? I don't know. Playing tournament this year, playing tournament a year ago, went out, in the first round of playing tournament in both seasons. But again, proving, getting better. They weren't great this year. Hornets, there's some talent there. Obviously, LaMelo Ball seems to have the goods out there. And Charlotte, the Pelicans, with the addition of C.J. McCollum, obviously Brandon Ingram there. Zion Williamson, whenever he gets on the court, if he wants to get on the court, if he wants to be a part of that situation, is a talent if he can get on the court. The Pelicans are a team that, and you look at the Rockets, KPJ, Kevin Porter Jr. is out there, Jalen Green, Christian Wood. It seems to have some decent talent there in Houston. And OKC has a, bunch of assets, draft assets, and, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander as well. So again, maybe those teams make that leap next year. Obviously, every year there's always that team that surprises, that shocks people, that takes that next step, that makes that huge leap, that goes from, not making the playoffs to making the playoffs. The Cavs were one of those teams. They were one of those teams who shocked everybody and made that leap into the playoffs and got better. The Cavs were one of those teams. Maybe the Detroit Pistons who played decent down the stretch this season, with Cade Cunningham as a team that possibly could make that next run. We look at the Grizzlies. They were a team. Grizzlies were in the play-in tournament last year. Ultimately, they beat the Golden State Warriors in the play-in tournament to get to the playoffs. But they have clearly ascended. The Memphis Grizzlies have, went from the play-in tournament now to 56 games. Won 56 games this year. And in the Eastern Conference, if the Memphis Grizzlies were in the Eastern Conference, they would be the number one seed in the East. They're the second seed in the West because the Phoenix Suns obviously are a big-time basketball team and played at a big-time level throughout the course of this season and won 60-plus games this year, 64 to be exact. So, but are we expecting the Cavs to win 50-plus games a la the Memphis Grizzlies? Again, a team who went from the play-in tournament to the number 2 seed in the Western Conference. It's 56 games, a legitimate projection for the Cavaliers next year? I don't know. 56 games is a lot of games, a lot of wins. But you look at Cleveland, you look at the East. I think Philadelphia is still going to be good. Brooklyn, still going to be good. I think this Atlanta team has a lot of talent as well. They're going to be good. Chicago, getting Lonzo Ball back, having DeRozan there. They're going to be good. Obviously, Giannis and Milwaukee, and he got the Boston Celtics with Tatum and Brown. I mean, the Cavs theoretically could get better, but the Eastern Conference is going to be tough. Eastern Conference might be tough for the next few seasons, right? The Eastern Conference, you can argue from top to bottom, this year is better than the West. I mean, obviously outside of Phoenix, and I mean, Golden State, they had some injuries there, and again, that's a bona fide team, and that's a team that can get to the NBA Finals and can win an NBA title. I mean, so you're thinking, 56-48 is a good goal. I think 48's a good goal. 48's a good goal for the Cavaliers next year. Yeah, I think that's a good goal. But I think, without a doubt, I think they definitely have to make the playoffs. Um, I, I think most Clevelanders would feel better, obviously, if they were not in the playing tournament as well next season. Um, so yeah, I mean, I just think expectations. Again, it's a lot easier to sneak up on somebody. It's a lot harder when they're expecting you now, right? If I'm running up to if I'm going to fight somebody, I'm going to and they're not expecting me to come, and I punch them in the face. Well, guess what? I got some. I got away. I got over in that particular spot because they weren't expecting it. Now they're expecting you to come. Well, it's a different ball game. Now you're going to have your hands full, and so people now are expecting the Cavs to come. They're expecting this team to be a better basketball team from this year. So I mean, yeah, but when you're expecting it, it becomes harder. It becomes harder to pull off, and so the expectations have now changed in Cleveland, which is a great thing. Because think about it, this was the biggest game in Cleveland since Game 4 of the 2018 NBA Finals, right? This is the biggest game in Cleveland since then. Because obviously, once LeBron left, it was all downhill. This was the biggest game since then, right? That was the biggest. Before this. That was the biggest game they had. Ultimately, they were, they lost the goals. They would have got swept in that series, and they really didn't have a legitimate shot in that series. And for them to get to the NBA Finals that particular season was a win, and clearly a win. But again, biggest game in Cleveland since that time. So, I mean, and I think a lot of the fan base in Cleveland, feel confident about, the ability of this team going forward, right? I mean, health, gotta stay healthy. You gotta stay healthy. You gotta stay healthy. I mean, if we think about it and what could have been if they were healthy. Let's say Rubio. Let's just say Sexton was the only person that went down, and they kept Rubio, and ultimately, well, we don't know if they would have been able to acquire Karis LeVert, but I mean, did he have a big impact on this team? Not as big as maybe we thought he would, but I just think you look at this team and you look at them, going forward and what could have happened if they were healthy. They might have won 50 plus. They might have won 50 games this year. They might have got to 50. This team might have got to. They definitely would have been one of the top 6 teams, without a doubt. But they might have gotten to 50. And then look at the 2 losses to Detroit and a third loss and another loss to Orlando, right? I mean, 2 teams, 2 teams that were in the bottom of the Eastern Conference this season, right? And you lose to Orlando and you lose to Detroit twice. So at that point, you're talking about if you beat Detroit twice, right? That's 47. That's 47. That's 47 wins. 47 wins there, and that's huge. That is huge. 47 wins for this team if they could have done that. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. This is not a Cavs fan account, no, but it is. We do talk Cavs on this channel. But again, I don't. I think if they were healthy, minus Sexton, I think 50 games was doable. It was doable. It was doable. I mean, yeah, Jared Allen definitely wasn't 100%. I mean, Jared Allen was not 100%. I mean, he was playing with one hand basically. And again, he tried, he battled, he gutted through. He did what he can tonight to get this team in position. He did what he could do. He tried his darndest, his hardest to get out there and be an asset to this ball club. And he did when he got it. It wasn't bad. I mean, Jared Allen was decent, but he was limited. He was clearly limited. Ended up with 11 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, had a block shot. So it was he gave him good minutes. Jared Allen gave them good minutes, and it definitely was. It was something they needed. They needed that boost. They needed that. They needed that. They just needed what he brings to the table as an all-star. I mean, Jared Allen is an all-star. I see a lot of people questioning JB tonight, JB Bickerstaff and his coaching tonight. Did you not like, what didn't you like? Did you not like Jetty Osman and Lamar Stevens not playing? What did you like? Did you not like sitting Garland down early in the fourth quarter there? It didn't sit him down for long. I mean, did you not like the switches there where they were switching on Trae Young? Near the end there, they doubled it a little bit at times, but I mean, you could argue, them switching. I know Mark Jackson was talking about that a lot. Them switching the pick and rolls, and how that became a problem. And Trae was just eating it up. I mean, Trae Young just, great players overcome defenses. Great players overcome. There's not many lockdown defenders in the NBA because of the way the rules are. Just not. I mean, Kevin Love, he didn't 1 for 2 for tonight, played 10 minutes, but they were going at Kevin Love. They were going at Kevin Love when he was on the court. So to some degree, maybe it became a liability on the defensive end. They were going at him. But it's just, again, just looking at this team and looking at this season, I think everybody would say it was a success, and I think everybody would go home happy. But at the same time, you're going home thinking about what could have been. What could have been. And yes, you talked about the switches and everything, and them being difficult. And but Trae is different. Trae Young is just different, man. He is different. And 32 points in the second half is different. It's different. 32 points in the second half is different. That's superstar stuff. That's stars. That's what stars do. That's, playoffs. Your name is made in the playoffs. And the name, Trae Young made a name for himself tonight. He made a name for himself last season. But the name, his name continues to ring bells, basically. I just again, you look at this season and going back to the season, I think you do walk away thinking about what could have been. I think you have to think about what could have been based on the amount of injuries that this team has had. You have to talk about what could have been. And you think about what could have been, and what could have been a team, if healthy, I mean, given the right matchup in the first round. Let's just say the Cavaliers would have got to the 6th spot. They would have played the Bucks in the first round. I don't think they would have beat the Bucks in the first round. I don't think the Cavs would have beat the Bucks in the first round if they would have got to the 6th spot. Let's just say hypothetically they got to the 5th spot. I don't think they would have beat the Sixers in the first round. Sixers swept this team in the regular season. And there were some close games. Don't get me wrong. There were some close games. But I don't think they would have beaten the Philadelphia 76ers. So if the Cavs had got to the 6th spot, they would have played the Milwaukee Bucks in the first round. Would they have beaten the Milwaukee Bucks in the first round? I don't think many would have believed the Cavs would beat the Milwaukee Bucks in the first round. No. If they would have had the Philadelphia 76ers in the first round, they beat the Sixers based on what we saw in the regular season, where Philadelphia swept them 4-0. Probably not. I think they would have gotten out in the first round against Philly as well if they would have gotten to the 5th spot. So, I mean, I think a first round exit, if I'm looking at it and I'm watching this team and and we're seeing what they were and what they did. I don't think this team would have gotten out of the first round, no matter what spot they would have had. Even if they would have got right, let's just say they won the 50 games. Well, they still would have been a fifth seed, and they would have played the 76ers. I don't think they would have beat the 76ers in the first round. I don't think they beat the Sixers in the first round. So, I think, I don't know. I don't know. I think they would have went out regardless in the first round. I think they would have went out in the first round regardless. I think they would have went out. I don't think they would have gotten out of the first round. You talk about the timeout there where Lowry threw the ball away, Herter with the great steal there. I was thinking the same thing in terms of the timeout. I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking in terms of timeout. I was thinking, yeah, in that spot, maybe. I was thinking timeout as well. But didn't happen. I mean, he threw the ball away, and that's sad. I mean, tough spot there. Because you had the possession. You had the possession, you played the defense, you entered the possession with the rebound, and then you throw it away. You did everything that you needed to do in that spot, in that moment, in that situation, and you throw it away. Any team in the playoffs is better than us. Talking about the Cavs, it was just a matter of getting that experience. Yeah, I do agree with that. I do agree with that. I don't think they would have got out in the first round. I agree with that. I totally agree with that. I agree with everything you say in relation to that. I agree with that. I agree that they weren't beaten. I don't think they would beat Milwaukee if they were if they were 6, and I don't think they were beating Philly if they were 5. I don't believe they would have. Obviously, I don't think they would have beat the Heat, but I do think they could have pushed them. I do think they could have pushed all these teams. I mean, I thought that, we look at just hypothetically looking at Philadelphia, those games were competitive games. They were competitive games, right? So, again, they were in those games. I do believe that while I don't think they would have beaten any of those teams, I thought they could have stretched those teams and then gotten the experience necessary to go forward and do what they needed to do. And yeah, a 6-game series, that's good to me. That's good experience. 6 games, you're stretching the team. You stretch the team a little bit. Maybe you have a moment, an opportunity, a chance to win the series. But in actuality, you can't, you won't, you will. You won't get it done, but you stretch them. And you get that experience, man. That experience is priceless. All the experience you can get is great. And this experience was great. Throughout the course of this regular season, they have moments like that game in Brooklyn. Before the regular season finale against Milwaukee last week in Brooklyn. Playoff atmosphere, right? Something this team didn't experience ever, right? They did throughout the course of the regular season in terms of those games in Philadelphia was kind of a playoff atmosphere. But again, a playoff atmosphere. And you doing that and you being a part of that would have been great. That would have been great to be a part of something. It's great to be a part of something like that. And then, like against Brooklyn, you got in the play-in tournament against Brooklyn, you were down 40-20 after the first quarter. But the rest of the way, you outscored Brooklyn by 13 points. Right? So you were better than Brooklyn the rest of the way. You just got yourself deep in a hole that you could not get out. You couldn't get out that hole. And again, that's experience, getting off to that good start. And just look, Brooklyn is a championship caliber team. And it's going to be very interesting to see if Brooklyn, what's going to happen with them against Boston. That's going to be a great series, by the way. Man, it's going to be a great series. Kyrie going back to Boston. That's going to be fun. That's going to be a lot of fun for people in Brooklyn. That's going to be a lot of fun, man. Yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun. And yeah, that's going to be a fun series. It's going to be, and I can't wait to watch that particular series. But we talk about, like, again, I talked about the Memphis Grizzlies and the ascension that they made, going from the play-in tournament, where they won and beat Golden State and got to the playoffs last year, to winning 56 games. I mean, if you're a Cavs fan, I think that's the blueprint, that's the model, that's what you want to see, right? That's what you want to see. You want to see them be able to ascend like that, be able to get to the second spot, be able to win 50 plus games. That's what you want. That's what you would be excited about. And so I I think, look at look at Memphis. Maybe that's the blueprint. I mean, look at Phoenix. You look at them a couple years ago, right? They added Chris Paul, and obviously they had some pieces together, but they had that big run in the bubble. I mean, they added Chris Paul, and they went to the NBA Finals last year, and many expect them to get back to the NBA Finals this year and ultimately possibly win a championship. They couldn't get the job done last year, but many expect them to get the job done this year. So we'll see how that plays out, and we'll see how that goes. You talk about Trae Young. Trae Young is different. He carried the Hawks. Yes, he did carry the Hawks. Trae Young is a special player with special ability. Logo Lillard. I mean, not Logo Lillard. Logo Trae Young and his ability to shoot it from any and everywhere. And his ability to just break defenses down. His ability to just wreak havoc out there for teams. I mean, he's just a special player who did special things tonight and got the job done. It would have been nice, I think, if Darius Garland could have did that tonight. Again, that's not a knock on Darius Garland, because Darius Garland had a sensational year. And, he wasn't awful tonight, but he struggled with a shot 9 for 27 from the field. But it would have been nice if Darius Garland could have brought that tonight and played at that level. But he wasn't bad. But it would have been nice if he could have played at that level. And and who was better, Trae Young or Darius Garland? I think Trae Young is still the better guard. But again, I think if you had Darius Garland or Trae Young, you're happy. You're going home happy. You're laughing. You're excited. You're in a good spot. You're in a good situation. And the Cavs are in a good spot, in a good situation. 107-101 loss to the Atlanta Hawks tonight at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. The season ends 44-38. 2 losses here in the play-in tournament. Won to Brooklyn there, where you got off to that bad start. Outscored Brooklyn 13 points the rest of the way, but fell short. And then ultimately tonight, you jumped out on the Atlanta Hawks at a 10-point lead at the break, but the Hawks came on back. Trae Young came alive, 15 points in the third, right? Assisted and scored 27 of the team's 33 points. So he accounted for, was a part of 27 of the team's 33 points in the third quarter. That ultimately brought the team back into the game, and ultimately the Cavs scored 61 points at the break, scored only 40 points in the second half, and ended up losing 107-101. Atlanta played better defense. The Cavs, the shot making wasn't the same. It's a tough spot, tough situation, and they're gone. Yes, they're not the Clippers, right? The Clippers fell tonight. Pandemic, Paul George wasn't able to go. COVID, that sucks. That's terrible, man. That's a terrible spot. No, with the COVID, not him not being able to play. Yes, the Clippers went 0-2 in the play-in tournament, just like the Cavaliers. So yeah, man, it's a good thing. I mean, misery loves company, right? And the Cavs have a little company now with the Clippers, who also went out in the play-in tournament after losing to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Patrick Beverley celebrating like it was 1999, jumping on tables and whatnot, like he won a championship, that one shining moment and all that stuff, throwing jerseys into the crowd. But the Clippers lost there, and they lost tonight. Without Paul George, you knew it would be tough. I thought the Clippers were actually going to get it done. They made a huge run in the third quarter there, took the lead, but, Pelicans got it done. And ultimately the Pelicans, right? I mean, credit to Willie Green and what he did in New Orleans and getting this team to the playoffs and getting this team, where they are today. And who knows, maybe Zion Williams will come back this year. I don't know. We saw him dunking in pre-games and all that other stuff. But, give the Pelicans a lot of credit for getting themselves in the playoffs, and give the Cavs a lot of credit. Kudos to the Cavs. I mean, look, we can talk about being disappointed, being upset, being frustrated, being angry, being mad, about what transpired tonight. You could talk about J.B. Bickerstaff and some of the moves he made and didn't make. You could talk about all those things, but at the end of the day, you're a Cleveland Cavalier. The Cleveland Cavaliers put themselves in position now, ultimately to try to make the playoffs. They didn't do it. Didn't happen. 44 wins this season. Won 22 games a year ago. Struggled mightily last season. Was awful last season. It was a bad year in Cleveland, right? There wasn't a lot of promise. There wasn't a lot of excitement about this team. Evan Mobley comes in, easily could be rookie of the year. Evan Mobley comes in and plays some big-time basketball, put up some big-time numbers, got some, did some big-time things. Easily, again, could be a rookie of the year. We'll see what happens. It's going to come down to between him and Scotty Barnes. We'll see how that plays out. But again, Evan Mobley, in the year he had, was sensational. Jarrett Allen turns himself into a first-time All-Star. Darius Garland turns himself into a first-time All-Star. So the future is bright. It's enormous. Colin Sexton may come back, may not come back. We'll see how they decide that situation. He will be a restricted free agent going into next season, going into the summer. So we'll see what they decide to do in that particular area. LeVert is under contract next season, and LeVert is the guy that can put the ball in the basket. A shot creator, a shot maker. He gets buckets. So he's a guy definitely is going to, you should be excited about in terms of the future. Lauri Markkanen wasn't bad this season. Maybe he'll take another step. This is sixth season in a year, still hasn't made the playoffs, but maybe he'll take that next step next season for the Cavaliers. So there is some hope. There is brightness, right? There is sunshine. Right? There hasn't been this much sunshine in Cleveland in a long time in terms of the basketball team. There has not been as much excitement as it is for this team. And so Cleveland now, you got to be excited. The fan base has to be excited. The youth you got a lot of youth, but you got talented youth. You got talented youth. Talented Evan Mobley at 20. Garland at 22. Jarrett Allen's going to be 24. The talent is there. The youth is Jarrett Allen. Let's just, when these guys say, I'm going to go in this offseason and work hard and get better, yada, yada, yada. Well, Jarrett Allen did that. He went in the offseason and got better. I didn't expect Jarrett Allen to have the season that he had this year. I didn't expect Jarrett Allen to do some of the things that he did this season. But he elevated his game. Jarrett Allen elevated his game this season. He did. And so You got to be happy with what you saw out of Jarrett Allen. He said he was going to work in the offseason. He worked in his offseason. He got paid. And sometimes when guys get paid, well, they go the opposite way. Well, they got their money. They got their comfortability. They got their, they got everything they needed. Jarrett Allen, 4-year, $100 million contract, so he got his money. And sometimes guys get money, guys get paid, and they go the opposite direction. Nah, not Jarrett Allen. He worked hard. Jarrett Allen worked hard and put himself in position to be an all-star and played, had his best year as a pro. Darius Garland did the same thing. Went in the offseason, went into the lab, and got better. This dude went to the lab and got better, improved, and just became an all-star caliber player and became one of the better point guards in this league. He did that in the offseason. He put the work in. He toiled in the offseason. He worked hard in the offseason and became a better player. That's what you want out of your players, your young players. Guys who are not afraid of some work. He's not afraid to put the work in. Colin Sexton is another guy who's not afraid to put the work in. These dudes work. And it shows. Their game shows it. Darius Garland works, and it showed. Jarrett Allen works, and it showed. Again, how many guys have you seen get their paper, get their money, and go the opposite direction? Get happy and just get content. I got paid. I got my money. And, these guys didn't do that. These guys did not do that. These guys did the opposite. Jarrett Allen, specifically, did the opposite. And Darius Garland is going to get a max contract no matter when. Right? Could happen this offseason. He's going to get max. He's a max guy. He's a max player. You're going to have to pay him as such. Evan Mobley is trending towards being a max player. You got to pay him as such. Right? You see a lot of Chris Bosh in this game. You see, maybe even a little Kevin Garnett in the game of Evan Mobley. I mean, this guy has so much promise, so much ability, super athletic, right? Decent offensive game, like can do a lot of different things, and and most importantly, contributes to winning. Evan Mobley contributes to winning. He's a winning player. So he's a guy that, doesn't seem to be afraid of putting the work in. So not only do you have young talent, not only do you have talented young talent, but you have guys who are willing to improve on their talent and willing to work their butts off, willing to work their tails off to put themselves in position to become better players. That's good, man. That's Koby Altman drafting guys with decent character, not only decent talent, but decent character, seemingly, because guys with decent character and decent talent and some integrity is willing to put work in to be better and be the player that they want to be. And again, a lot of people get paid and go opposite, man. They get paid to get their money, and they start spending some time at the buffet line and get start eating, just being happy, right? They're just enjoying their money, enjoying the fruits of their labor. You can do a lot with $100 million. You can do a lot with $100 million. Yes, they will be getting a lottery pick. So maybe the lottery balls can go in their favor and they can get what? The first pick. I doubt it, but you know what? Another lottery pick. Another lottery pick, and they, maybe they do package something together, and figure something out. Figure something out in terms of what they want to do and adding to this team and adding to this roster. So this season started out with little to no promise, right? And then as we went along, started to become more promising and more promising and then more promising. And then, along the way, some injuries started to pile up a little bit. And things just, you thought, okay, maybe this team could be one of the top teams in the East. And then the injuries started to pile up. And, Jared Allen goes down, Sexton, Rubio, all those guys go down. Mobley goes down for a period of time, right? Marketing goes down for a period of time. So all these things happen to this team, and obviously, they still kept afloat, still battled. I mean, going into the All-Star break, they were 35-23. Going into the All-Star break, 12 games over 500. And again, the Cavs fans were excited. They still were excited. And even, March 6th. March 6th is when the season may have just completely went down to a degree, right? Things started, once Jared Allen went down, it became something that this team just struggled. And they just never could get that back. They never got that back. Then, they never could have got that back. Just couldn't have got that. They didn't get that back. And they may have ran out of gas. They just ran out of gas. And they're limping there towards the finish line. You could argue they even got fortunate because Milwaukee, in that last game of the season, Milwaukee wasn't looking to win that game. So they sat. I mean, Drew Holiday played like 2 minutes. Maybe I think he played like 30 seconds. He wanted to keep his streak alive. So, I mean, they played no starters in that game. And, because obviously Cleveland could have been in a position where they could have been a 9 or 10 seed. But, they got fortunate in that particular game because Milwaukee didn't play any of their starters. Kevin Love went crazy in that game with 32 points in 15 minutes, some crazy number. But, but they were fortunate that Milwaukee didn't try to win that game. Not to say Milwaukee, even if they would have tried, would have won that game, but they didn't try to win the game. And ultimately, in that particular situation, they got fortunate and they got the 8th seed. And, even when they got the 8th seed, you were saying, well, they're probably not going to beat Brooklyn, but maybe they'll beat Atlanta or Charlotte. But, and the fans did their job tonight. I mean, Cavalier fans should be happy. Anybody that was at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse tonight should be happy. They did your job tonight. They did the job tonight, and they got it done. Right, the fans got it done. Their energy was infectious. Their energy fueled this team early. That energy helped them punch the Atlanta Hawks in the mouth early. That energy was they were on fire early on, but it just obviously flamed out, and it just Trae Young became Trae Young, and they just got it done, man. They just got it done, and the season ends for the Cavaliers at this point. It was fun for all Cavalier fans, I believe. You saw a fun product. It was unexpected. That was fun. That has to make it fun for you. But at the end of the day, I think you would say, while you're happy by what they did and how, the success they had and getting to the playing tournament, you're disappointed at the same time because you knew or you felt, you believed, if healthy, this team could have been one of the top 6 teams in the East and could have gotten involved in a 7-game series, which would have been great for this team. And I just think, we'll see what happens going forward for the Cavaliers, and we'll see what they can be going forward. I mean, the future is definitely bright on paper. So bright. And, maybe, just maybe, this team can take that next step. And that next step, the first step, you could argue, maybe is the play-in tournament. The next step is one of the top 6 teams in the East. And then the next step after that, maybe win a round or 2. And who knows from there. Maybe they can build a Kobe Altman, can put together a championship caliber team, without LeBron. Maybe they could do it without LeBron. Or maybe, who knows, maybe LeBron will come back. And at some point, maybe LeBron comes back and LeBron, does what LeBron can do for the land. What is your favorite team? I am a Sixers guy personally. But that's that. Yeah, I do. I am a Sixer guy. But in terms of the Cavaliers and LeBron, I mean, maybe LeBron comes back and finish. I mean, it would only be right if LeBron finishes it off in Cleveland. I think it would only be right. That would be cool if LeBron comes back to Cleveland. And I just feel like that would be, and maybe LeBron, look, did it in 2016, Cleveland, this one's for you. Maybe come on back and bring his son Bronny, right? Maybe, Bronny can come on back. And look, if LeBron wanted to come back to Cleveland and they could find a way to make it happen, dude. Like, it's LeBron James, right? It's LeBron James. And it would just be perfect. It would just be perfect for him to end it here in Cleveland. And that'd be perfect. That would be perfect. A perfect situation, a perfect scenario for everybody. The Sixers and the Raptors, I do believe the Sixers will beat the Raptors. I don't think it will be easily. The Raptors do match up well against the Sixers. And one thing about the Raptors, they are battle-tested. I mean, Van Vliet and Siakam, I mean, these guys were a part of that championship run. They are a battle-tested team, battle-tested dudes who know how to win. But I do think the Sixers will win that particular series. Toronto did win the season series, but I don't know how much I read into that when it comes to the playoffs. I think it means something, but it doesn't mean much, if that even makes sense. I think it means something, but I don't think it means much. And so I do think Philly will get by the Raptors. I think they get by in 5 or 6 games. I do think they'll beat the Raptors. They will. We'll see what happens after that. But, I think Philly does beat the Raptors. Yeah, in terms of LeBron, 100% agree. As long as he has no control over the front office and what happens to our young guys. I don't know if, when LeBron, when he went to Miami, I don't think he didn't have that level of power and control because just Pat Riley there, right? Pat Riley, had level and control of that organization. Um, but yeah, I mean, heck, if you can get LeBron James back, why not? This dude almost won a scoring title. I mean, LeBron James, almost won a scoring title this year. He was up there, and this dude is still playing at a high level at age 37. Has some injuries, ankle and things of that nature, but he's still LeBron James. And so yeah, if LeBron James wanted to go back to Cleveland, by all means, the Cavs should be welcome him back with open arms and bring him on back. Sure, why not? It's LeBron James, for crying out loud. So yeah, for sure. But I don't think LeBron is walking through that door. So again, I think JB Bickerstaff, I think, is a solid coach. I think he is the guy that can lead this organization at this point, at this time with this group. The players definitely seem to like him. The players, Rondo was talking about JB being one of the better coaches he's ever had. Rondo's been around. JB seems to be the guy for this team going forward. He seems to be the guy that can lead this team. He led this team this year. And I think JB is that. I think JB is okay. I think JB will be fine going forward. And I think the Cavs are in good hands with JB. Kobe Altman, it seems like they're in good hands with Kobe, right? He's going to be in this organization for a period of time, right? He just got a promotion, just got an extension. So he's going to be around. He's going to be building this roster. And to his credit, he's building this roster decently. I mean, the roster is decently built, right? He found a way to get Jared Allen, brought them in. And, he was a part of James Harden trade, that three-team deal. Might have been 4 teams, I don't remember. But anyway, Jared Allen came to Cleveland. They got him there in that particular situation. And again, that's huge. Jared Allen has turned himself into an all-star. I mean, to his credit, he drafted Evan Mobley. Again, we've seen what Evan Mobley has done. Colin Sexton, 20-point scorer a year ago. Maybe an asset that you can use to make yourself better. We'll see what they do there in that spot, in that situation. So Kobe Altman has done his job, right? Kobe Altman has done his job for the Cavaliers and has put this team in position to be a decent team going forward. And again, JB Bickerstaff, you look at what he did and, going with the 3 big lineup and, something that, the NBA was trending towards small ball. There are guys shooting 53s a game and things of that nature. But they did something different and they had size, they have athletic size. And, Chip Kelly once said, big people beat up little people or something of that nature. Big people, athletic big people can do some decent things, right? And so, and especially with the versatility that they had, you got a big in marketing, 7-footer who can shoot threes, and these a legitimate 3-point shooter. Mobley has 3-point range. Okay, so, but again, I think going forward. If you look at, if let's just say you bring everybody back, Garland, LeVert in your backcourt, and I think you run out with the same big lineup of Allen, Mobley, and Markkanen. I think that's a very good basketball team. And then, you figure out what you're going to do with Sexton. Maybe he takes a prove-it deal this year, coming off the injury. And I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what the market is for Colin Sexton. But I don't think you can overpay for Colin Sexton. I don't think you can do that because eventually you're going to have to pay Mobley. You got to give him, he's going to get max dollars. We can't pay everybody. Kevin Love eventually is going to come off the books. So, it is, there is some questions, but at the same time, there's more answers than questions. There's more answers than questions. Kobe Altman, give him also credit. What he did, in terms of Lamar Stevens, undrafted player, but Lamar Stevens is turned into a rotational player. He's a rotational player. Um, so credit to Kobe Altman and them for that. Dylan Windler, nah, I don't think he's it. I don't think Dylan Windler is it. I don't. He's just like you talk about Okoro in terms of shot creation. Dylan Windler has to work on some. He's got to become a better shot creator, right? Dylan Windler has to become a better shot creator. Just does. But I believe he was the 27th pick a few years ago. But Windler is not. Yes, Dylan Windler is not it. Agreed. He is not it. Um, Nah, he's just not it. Dean Wade is not bad, decent piece. I think Dean Wade is a decent piece. You know, I mean, he was obviously a guy that they missed in terms of injuries. But he's a piece, decent shooter, not bad, right? Decent size. Dean Wade's not. Dean Wade is okay. He's a guy who can definitely, be in your rotation, maybe at the bottom of your rotation. Um, but a guy that can give you minutes at times. But I think Dean Wade is okay, right? I mean, it's not great. Don't get me wrong. Like we're not singing the praises of Dean Wade and getting excited about Dean Wade. But he ain't awful. So this team again, not the way you want it to end. Jeff, definitely not the way you want it to end. Um, I don't think Rondo's going to be back. You talk about Windler, Goodwin, decent minutes at times. Moses Brown, 22 years old, couple double doubles. Moses Brown actually played well with OKC a year ago. He had some good minutes for OKC. He had some decent stretches for OKC a year ago. So I mean, I'm not going to dismiss Moses Brown. I'm not, right? I'm not going to dismiss Moses Brown as young. I mean, you got him for the cheap. He's not going to be expensive at this point. But I don't know if he's going to be. We'll see what this roster looks like next year. But why not Moses Brown as a backup big? Why not Moses Brown as a backup big? He's cheap. It's not like it's costing you a bunch of money, right? Probably, get him in a team-friendly contract, right? So you should be good there. Lamar Stevens is on a team-friendly contract, right? So, I mean, Cleveland is in a good spot. But again, the expectation has changed. And again, when expectations change, sometimes guys aren't necessarily ready to step up to those expectations. And I just feel like, this team is in a good spot. And I think everybody, if you're a Cavs fan, should go home being positive, feeling happy. Can't bump out your chest just yet, but you're happy. You're happy about what you saw. I think everybody, clearly everybody, and that kind of goes without saying, but definitely wanted a 7-game series, whether and wanted this team to have that opportunity, wanted this team to have that moment, and I think that would have been cool. That would have been cool for them to have that moment. And again, I think they could have stretched Miami if healthy. They could have took Miami to 6 games. Why not? They could have took Miami to 6 games. I think they could have took anybody in the East to 6 games, right? And JB Bickerstaff said throughout the course of the season, really, he thinks he said the Cavs weren't a team that people wanted to see in the playoffs. And, to a degree that could be true. Because here's the thing. In the first round, and this is why, in the first round, you're usually playing a team like the 7th and 8th seed. If you're one of the top 2 seeds, you're usually head and shoulders better than those teams. And this year, I don't know if you can say that. You can't say that Miami is head and shoulders above the Atlanta Hawks. I'm not saying that. I think the Hawks can give the Miami Heat a series, a legitimate series. Heck, they could sneak up and beat them. Brooklyn, obviously, the 7th seed. Boston, the 2nd seed. Obviously, Brooklyn is a team that can beat the Boston Celtics. The East is stacked this year. The East is most definitely stacked this year. And it could be that way for a period of time. The East could be stacked for a period of time, right? Like, again, I went through it. Brown and Tatum ain't old. They're young players. In Boston, Toronto ain't bad. With Siakam and Van Vliet and Scotty Barnes, right? Like, come on. Like, the East is the Atlanta Hawks, right? Trae Young, obviously. John Collins is hurt, but maybe they'll get him back. Like, the Hawks are a talented team. They have a talented roster. So, like, the East is stacked. So, we could talk about the Cavs being even better next year and still being around the same spot, 5-6 spot in the East. They could be better next year and still fighting and fighting for those top spots. So, they still could be fighting, even though they're better, they could be better next year. They still could be in a position where, they're fighting to stay out of the play-in tournament. So, that's how stacked the Eastern Conference is from top to bottom. Brooklyn ain't going nowhere, man. With Kevin Durant, and you had a Ben Simmons who, his ability to defend. And so, that's one of the missing things that's one of the things they were missing. So you get a lockdown defender in Ben Simmons who doesn't have to score. Like, you don't need Ben Simmons' points. And that was the issue with Philly. Philly needed Ben Simmons' points, and Ben Simmons obviously couldn't deliver. Well, guess what? Brooklyn doesn't need his points. They don't need his points, right? They need him to be Bruce Bowen, right? Just Bruce Bowen, a guy that can defend. They just need him to be an elite defender. Ben Simmons easily could have been Defensive Player of the Year last season. Easily. Ben Simmons is an elite defender. So you add that to Brooklyn. Brooklyn's going to be tough for years to come. Boston's going to be tough for years to come. What teams in the East playoffs this year don't make it next year? That's a good question. Let's look at it. So, the Knicks were good a year ago, struggled this season. Indiana's rebuilding. Detroit is rebuilding. Obviously, there's always going to be a surprise, right? Cleveland was one of those teams that surprised. But everybody else, the Knicks, we expected to maybe be a little better than they were. Well, we definitely expected the Knicks to be better than this year. But you look at Miami, we expected Miami. Boston, we expected Milwaukee, Philly. Toronto, we expected to be fairly good. Chicago, we expected, obviously, what they did in the offseason. Of course, Brooklyn, Atlanta, Eastern Conference Finals, we expected that. Charlotte, we expected Charlotte to be what they were. Cleveland, obviously, was the wild card this year. So, Detroit might be able to. Washington. Let's look at Washington. Washington at top 10. You got Porzingis. If they can keep Bradley Beal around, maybe Washington's a team that could take that step. And even New York. They had a difficult season this year, but maybe they're the team that surprises. And, Orlando's building something down there as well. It's kind of hard to say, but you could argue these top 10 teams might not look different. Washington maybe, New York possibly. Indiana's building, but yeah, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for anybody. The East is going to be tough, man. It's going to turn into the West. Remember the West? West. Has everybody's the West in terms of being the better of the conferences. You can argue the East. Man, they're going to be, the East is stacked. It's stacked. Atlanta, again, they're down at 8, but they usually, just as good as a lot of teams that's in the top 6, and could beat one, the teams in the top 6 in a 7-game series. And again, they're going to be a tough out for the Miami Heat. They're going to be a tough out, especially if they can get John Collins back. And we don't know what's going to happen with Capella. But again, John Collins is huge. Atlanta's going to be a tough out. Atlanta is going to be a tough out. So, yeah, the East is going to be stacked. And so, again, that goes back to my point. Cleveland could be better next year, but at the same time, they could be in the same spot where they're struggling to stay out of the play-in tournament. I mean, look at the top 6 teams. Like Boston struggled early on in the season, turned things around, finished strong, ended up winning 51 games. But look at the top 6 teams. Miami's in decent shape. Boston's in decent shape. Milwaukee appears in decent shape. Philly could be interesting because is James Harden washed? I don't know. I don't know what he is. It could be a hamstring situation, or has he lost a step? That should be interesting. But Toronto, I think, is going to be good. With the nucleus and the talent that they're building in Chicago, it's going to be better. Lonzo and DeRozan, and they're probably going to definitely sign Levine and some, so they're going to be, it's going to be stacked. And obviously Brooklyn, what they have, and then Atlanta as well. And then Charlotte is still building up their roster. So look, Cavs could be better than they were than this season and still be struggling to make the playoffs. I don't see, maybe Miami. I don't see Chicago. I think Lonzo is a winning player. He definitely played well. Before the injuries and everything. And Chicago was playing well before the injuries. Injuries bit them in the butt too, just like the Cavaliers, right? But again, Chicago, Chicago, I don't think it's gonna fall off. And Miami's, Lowry still playing a decent level. Butler, but they're not young. They're not younger guys. But Bam Adebayo, he's an all-star caliber center. Tyler Hero had a big year for this team. Duncan Robinson's a sniper. Miami still, I think, the East is going to be tough. The East is going to be tough sledding going forward. It's going to be tough sledding for a lot of teams in the East, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun, and we'll see what happens. But we're about to get out of here now. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, support your channel. But we're about to get out of here now. Credit to the Cavaliers; they were able to make it happen. It should be interesting. You talk about Miami; that should be interesting what Miami does. I don't think the number 1 seed in the East, but I don't think anybody's saying I'm afraid of Miami. I don't. But you look at the Cleveland Cavaliers. 22 games a year ago, doubled that number, 44 this season. Playing tournament, so they got a taste of the playoffs to a degree, right? And now this team appears to be on the up and up. Darius Garland is an all-star. Jared Allen is an all-star. Evan Mobley has all-star potential, could be rookie of the year. So the future is bright in Cleveland. And good night. Take care of yourself. Yeah, the future is bright in Cleveland. And so if you're a Cavaliers fan, you should be happy. You should be excited. And you should be looking forward to all the possibilities of what could happen next year. But let me just give you a word of caution. When expectations rise, sometimes the players and teams are not able to rise up to those expectations. And you're not surprising anybody this year. Remember that. There's going to be no surprises with this team next year. So it's going to be interesting to see how this team responds. And they're young. Sometimes youth responds and fights and we're going to prove that we are what we are. And then sometimes it's not so. And they may not be ready for that. But it appears the character of these guys, the character of No doubt, appreciate it. The character of these guys, the characters of Garland and Allen and Mobley, the character seems to be high. And that's always important. But we're getting out of here now. Cavs fall to the Atlanta Hawks 107-101. Again, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video, subscribe to the channel. And we'll be back here sometime. We're actually going to be back here tomorrow. We're going to talk some boxing tomorrow. We're going to be here for after the Spence Ugas fight. So we'll talk some boxing tomorrow night. But we're out of here. Peace.